My name is Kris Gethin, and what I aim to bring to you is inspiration, motivation from clients, everything that will allow you to evolve as a human being. Hello, everybody. This is Kris Gethin here. Welcome to another episode of the Kris Gethin podcast. Now, I have a phenomenal guest who's been on the show before. Very rare do I have a guest come on a second time. This gentleman may have to come on a third time, though, because his background, he can cover so many things, whether it be testosterone optimization, peptides, spiritual resetting, biohacking, anti-aging. This guy knows the lot. Campbell, welcome back, my friend.
Kris, man, it's always a humble, honored, and privileged to be with you whenever I get that opportunity. So thank you for having me back on the show today.
Of course. I'm always blown away whenever you send me like an email or a WhatsApp and you're like, hey, this is what I'm working on at the moment. Did you know this? And you send me some studies and some specs that are out there. And I'm like, wow. Some of it I can really, really relate to. And I'm like, wow, a lot more people need to know about this. Now, when I had you on the show the first time, we did cover peptides. We covered testosterone, and we spoke about the book that I have here that I've read a couple of times now, which is the Testosterone Optimization Therapy Bible. Now, what made you actually start to study testosterone in particular? Because a lot of people think of testosterone and they go steroids, bodybuilding, performance enhancing. However, you look at it from an optimization standpoint and helping people's health. So what made you take that deep dive down that rabbit hole?
Great question. Just getting kicked in the testicles playing basketball as a 29-year-old guy, now 23 and a half years ago, it was 1999 and I was playing an adult men's league, got kicked, no idea that anything had happened to me. About 8 to 10 weeks later, I started feeling run down and I went to my PPO doctor. At the time I was an ad rep. I worked for the Los Angeles Times and I just got lucky. As we say, there's no coincidences, only synchronicities. But he referred me to an endocrinologist in Southern California who happened to be a Harvard-trained guy. And he ran a test to look at my total and free testosterone levels. And he found out that I had the testosterone levels of what could be considered a geriatric, an 80-plus-year-old guy. And so he's like, look, man, I can actually put you on a therapeutic dose of testosterone and have you as right as rain, within the same amount of time, 8 to 10 weeks, but go home and talk to your wife. I was actually engaged. I wasn't married yet, but I was like a couple months away from getting married, get her authorization and, we can do this. So I was like, okay, cool. So I went home, talked to my wife or wife to be at that moment. Her name was Kelly. This is a long time ago. And she's like, you're a smart guy. You understand this kind of stuff. Sure. Why not? What's the risk? So long story short, I went on therapeutic testosterone and 8 to 10 weeks later, when I went back to see him, I was feeling amazing and he wanted to take me off. And I was like, oh, no way, man. I'm not coming off this. This is like life altering. So then from that point, I stayed on, obviously. And then I worked with other various doctors, but I became, exactly as you already said, a very meticulous, very detailed lab rat, understanding like how could I utilize therapeutic testosterone in the, context of optimization. Like, how can I live longer and stronger? What else can I do? And again, this is back in 1999, 2000, and there wasn't a lot of written material unless you could read Russian or Bulgarian. There just wasn't a lot of stuff out there. So, as I always say, standing on the shoulders of giants, I got my hands on anything I could get my hands on, including studies that were on PubMed and Medline and all that stuff back then. And, just reaching out to people, I became just this meticulous, again, student. And eventually, Kris, fast forward to like year 2013, a lot of my friends were telling me that like, dude, you know more about this than any doctor. You have to write a book. And so I wanted to write a book and I put together a white paper and I sent it to Rick Collins, who's like one of the leading,
I know
Rick real well, of course. And, he graciously responded right away and read it and said, dude, this is unbelievable. But, if somebody got a bug up their ass, as a, non-medical licensed person, they could come after you. So I was like, oh, not going to do it, shelved it. But I'd also sent the white paper to Nelson Virgil, who read it about 3 months later. He's a native of Venezuela. He happened to be in Venezuela at the time. There was all sorts of like stuff going on in his native country. And when he eventually read it, he responded to me again 4 months later or whatever, and just says, I don't know who you are, but this is sensational. You have to put this out into, the ether. Men deserve to read this. So then him and I spoke, and he counseled me and mentored me. And about a year and a half later, the first book, which was the definitive TRT manual, was born. And that was launched in end of 2015. It was really written in 2014, but then rewritten and, prepped for the mainstream. And it became a very, fast selling. A lot of people read that. You probably actually had context with that at some point in 2016. And then through all the various people that I met, researchers, doctors, I ended up writing the next book, which is the one that you hold in your hands right now, which came out in 2018. And then I also wrote a bunch of books on fasting and spirituality, and just becoming, like you said, an alchemist, a real metaphysical biohacker of understanding like what's this and what's that. It's like really hard to explain like all the things that came from my pursuit of this, but blessed and humbled that I was able to learn all these things and meet all these different people to get to where I am here now today, which we'll talk about. I have a recent course that just literally launched in end of December, early January of this year, 2022. And it's really the latest and greatest, right? Because obviously the last book, which you hold in your hand, is from 2018, and things change and shift, at very, very fast rate with this. And as you know, also, a lot of people don't read today. A lot of people want to watch videos, they want to get clips. They're so distracted from so many different ways. So this is my compendium of everything I've learned and known and, put into a video course. And as you also know, it's much shorter. Okay. The book that you hold in your hand is 600 plus pages, 1,000 plus studies. It's incredibly verbose. It has everything in it, but it's just too detailed nowadays for the way people are. People want their information like given to them really, really matter of fact. How can I get this, in the bits and blocks and bytes that I can, actualize in my own life and, engage with. And so that's what the course is now.
Yeah. And what I liked about the course, and what a lot of people do like about courses from various subjects, is that you've actually got Jay Campbell there telling you and explaining, as opposed to, like you said, reading this book, like, look how thick this book is. That's a lot of information. I've read it twice, though. There's a lot of phenomenal information in there. But when you have somebody actually explaining and breaking it down, and you can pause and make notes, I mean, of course, you have editorial content there as well. It just makes it a little bit easier for a lot of people to digest. You have some people who like to read books, some people who like to have audiobooks, and then you've got the next level, which is the course that you delivered now. So just before we go into the course a little bit, because I've obviously checked that out myself, and that's why I wanted to get you on the show, because there's a lot of phenomenal information that people wouldn't know that may have relevance to them, especially over the last couple of years.
Sure.
Now, when you said, you got kicked in the balls years ago, and, then you went and had testosterone therapy, what age were you then? What were the effects that you were feeling of having low testosterone levels? And then fast forward, you said you felt phenomenal 8 weeks later. Well, what's the comparison? What's the contrast?
So I was almost 30. I was literally, it was in around this time, actually, in December, January of me almost turning 30. And I'm an ex-basketball player, really professional athlete. And so for me, it manifested as after getting kicked, my body just crumbled. I started having all sorts of like lower back issues. I just felt horrible. I had no energy. There were times where I would go to work and just be like in the middle of the afternoon, just feel like absolute dog shit. And again, at that point, I'm a smart guy. I have a molecular biology minor from back in college and stuff, but I knew nothing about testosterone. I knew nothing about these kind of things. And I had no clue to like really investigate it. Like everybody else, I was trained to go to the doctor and say, "Hey, doctor, what's the matter with me?" And very truthfully, it's very relevant to talk about this right now. The average doctor has no fucking clue either, as you know, right? So if you're a young guy in your late 20s, late 30s, even in your, I would say a young guy still is in your early 40s, and you go to your average garden variety, primary care physician, they're not going to know shit. And why, again, as I say, no coincidence is only synchronicities. The guy that I went to who didn't know me from Adam either was like, you know what? Something doesn't seem right. I want to refer you out to an endocrinologist. Okay. And this endocrinologist happened to be trained. And again, long story, to where it got me and stuff like that. But ultimately, the symptoms of testosterone, what I call testosterone deficiency, are just brain fog, lack of energy, no will or desire to go to the gym and train. Everybody thinks about sexual dysfunction, but usually that's the last symptom or side effect that people start to notice of having a sexual dysfunction, right? Because guys use Viagra, they use Cialis, they use nitric oxide stimulators. So that's like not really one of the, telltale signs is like erectile dysfunction, although it is part of a testosterone deficiency. But, high levels of gut fat, disturbed sleep, an inability to get into deep restorative polyphasic sleep. But those are the normal symptomology. So again, for me, what I was suffering, which was just mostly like brain fog in the afternoon and just a lack of energy and being run down. So, once you address those issues and you do work with a physician, and obviously that's part of the course, I recommend doctors across the world that people can work with. This is like, it's just a dramatic up level, of everything you have in your life. And again, I think it's important. I mean, I know this and the circles and stuff you hang out with, but a lot of people, especially, and this affects women too. We're talking primarily about men, of course, but a lot of people never get diagnosed. And, they go through their 30s and 40s and 50s, taking, pink and purple and blue pills, right, for Cialis and Viagra and Levita. And then the other bullshit that they prescribe them is SSRIs, right? Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which are, brain, depressive altering medications. And so that's where most guys get. That's what they get prescribed from a doctor who doesn't understand how to do an evaluation of their hormones. And so like I always say, and again, this is part of the course, it's very important that you become the proactive scientist of your own health and you understand this so that you're not out there, again, standing there with your doctor who's right now writing you a script for 2 drugs that are only going to make your situation worse. Because as you know, Kris, they're not treating the root cause. The root cause is your hormonal deficiency. And the symptomology that you now have is like, again, brain fog, depressed, gut fat, no energy. And so they're writing you scripts to like cover up. And then obviously sometimes maybe a lack of erectile strength. So they're going to write you a script for an erectile dysfunctional medication. And then of course an SSRI, which ultimately, and it's a whole nother rabbit hole, it makes it worse because we know that SSRIs actually create more of a significant testosterone deficiency in doing the brain patterning things that it does or that it addresses. So again, it's just the whole allopathic medical system, as you know, is broken, a wreck, especially in the last 2 years now. And a lot of men just don't have a path to go unless they listen to guys like you or me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely more so you than myself on this subject. Now, I have a lot of my clients go through blood work because I want to check everything to see if there aren't any deficiencies. And what I've noticed over the past 20 odd years that I've been doing this is that the testosterone levels seem to be declining a lot more in younger individuals than in the past. And now there's an environmental factor that we'll discuss now shortly, but in your opinion, do you feel that like heavy metal contaminants or plastics, that we're surrounded by, EMFs, microwaves, satellites, obviously people are staying up later, exposed to artificial light, etc. Do all of these things have an impact, or what have you seen has had the majority I'd say a cumulative impact for people, especially younger people, to have lower testosterone results?
So all of those things do. Basically the simplest way to say it, and I know Dr. J, Dr. Anthony J, who used to be
had him on the show.
Researcher. Yep. Great guy, good friend of ours both. His book, I always tell people to read his book, Estrogeneration.
Yeah, great book.
Literally, along with my book, that book, I mean, it's a seminal moment book, and that all men should become aware, and women should read that book too, because it really gives you an idea of what we're up against. But you said it, Kris, absolutely as succinctly as you could ever say it. All of those things, which I like to call the modernization of everyday life, are leading to these things. Men in their 18 to 25 range now have testosterone deficiency. If you speak with the average doctor who's out there working in this realm now, they will tell you that, I have guys coming in, 18 to 22, And they're not the guys we're really targeting in the show today. But I want to say this because people should understand this, who have complete and total sexual dysfunction. They cannot get an erection. And what that is, just so people understand, is yes, it's part and parcel of the biochemical assault that is happening, from every angle. But it's also, as you said, the blue light addiction. Because what happens is if you're going from Netflix to the internet to video games to YouPorn or Pornhub or whatever it is, you will ultimately create a dopamine transference in the brain from the hits that you get from the stimulation that you get from all of those electronic EMFs, right? So like what happens is you become, and this is, a lot of the doctors talk about this, but you literally damage your serotonergic and your dopaminergic brainwave patterning. And so now you cannot get an erection like in normal life, right? So like being with a woman or being with a man or whatever, like, the sexual dysfunction that comes from, because again, it's all due to you changing the dopamine and, serotonin release in your brainwave patterns. And so a lot of guys are damaged. And so the only, a way to alleviate this is to look into a hormonal solution. But then you're talking about really young guys, and the medical system doesn't really like guys being on therapeutic testosterone or even other adjuvants to stimulate that at that early of an age. So the whole thing is a mess. But to go back to what you were saying about, what's causing it, I mean, it's almost unavoidable, unless you're spending 4 to 5 hours a day, grounding yourself in nature, to eradicate all of this, because again, all of this, we work and play in all day long, right? Like you make your living being on this, I make my living being on this. I mean, obviously we have breaks in between, but I mean, all of this stuff in a big picture standpoint does cause damage to our endocrine system. And it will ultimately, in most cases or in most people, cause some sort of a deficiency if you're not extremely what I call anal retentive. And that's why, and we'll talk about this, but that's why I like to say that testosterone, therapeutic testosterone, is the biggest tool in the tool belt to solve for all of these issues when you're, again, trying to peel back the onion and, go one by one, 2 by 2, 3 by 3, whatever, like, as you said, I mean, like, there's just so many things, sleep, the endocrine disrupting chemicals in your house, again, the blue light, the electromagnetic frequencies that people are being radiated by. I mean, think of all the people that literally plug in their phone next to their head when they go to sleep at night. Exactly. You know what I mean? Like there's just all of these little things that we don't really understand that are causing harm, again, to our endocrine system and really all of our biological systems.
Yeah, for sure. And like I try to, and what I encourage my clients is try to mitigate as much damage as possible, so making sure that you have a phone case that's kind of scrambling EMF. So I'll have like an earthing mat. So I'm at my desk and I'm earthing at the same time. And obviously, like yourself, we're in the blue light blocking glasses and doing whatever we can to mitigate the damage. We're in the Get Lambs, shorts and whatnot.
Faraday bag. I literally put my phone and my kids' phones in this every night.
That's awesome. That's great. I actually had Brian Hoyer here a couple of years ago, and I slept in a Faraday cage, and my sleep was off the chart. It was so good. It was so good, just by blocking a lot of the satellite signals, the EMFs. And, funny what you said about that, that dopamine dump that you're getting constantly from, like you said, it's Netflix, it's your phone, it's online, it's on a podcast, whatever. And I can make people dumb as well. It's been shown to decrease cognitive performance as well. There's, testosterone, of course, is one thing, but there's so many. And that's why I really enjoyed going on that silent retreat in December, as I told you, Jay. It's like the senses were heightened. All of a sudden, none of that dopamine dump into the prefrontal cortex. And I felt like I'd came out on a new tropic. My senses were so heightened then. And that's what we got to try to do. Maybe bookend our days where we don't have exposure to electronics and whatnot, and, do whatever we can to mitigate this damage. Now, one of these disruptors that we've noticed over the last couple of years, and this is, one of the main reasons I wanted to get you on the show, is that we know what's happened over the last couple of years, and with the C word, I'll call it. is that it's hit people in different ways. You know, some people you'll have, they're a ball of health in an amazing condition, and it knocks them out for like 4 to 6 weeks. Then you have some people who are like obese, immune compromised, but maybe they only get it for 3 days. Everyone's different. But what we've seen, especially with long COVID, you know, we've seen how it's affecting people from, you know, a neuro standpoint. It's, you know, giving up that brain fog for like 6 months or so. But one of the things that I found that was fascinating and really allowed a light bulb to go up in my head was the papers that you showed me and the statistics that you showed me on how COVID had affected people's testosterone levels in a negative way, like in a huge impact. Now, does this discriminate? And if you don't mind talking about how that happens as well, but I'd really like to know, like, does it discriminate? Does it happen to everybody or just some people?
Well, that's a great question. And the only way to answer it is what we know. And what we definitely know is that some people have no issue. And what I mean by that is like, for example, let me take a step back. So we understand the science of why testosterone is being targeted / eradicated / reduced, whatever. And again, some people, I will say some people. And before we go any deeper, I want people that, scientists out there, or the people that listen to your show, which there are many, who will come to you and me and say, but that's not true. And, Jay's a conspiracy theorist or whatever. I mean, again, I'm saying that this has happened in some people because you've had clients that have experienced it. I have had friends and clients and people that have reached out to me and sent me their lab work. So I will again preface saying that this is happening in some people, we know for a fact. But why is it happening theoretically? Well, scientifically, we know that COVID or SARS-CoV-2, whatever you want to call it, most people at this point, I think, know it's an engineered form of illness, some form of a bioweapon, whatever. It doesn't matter where your thoughts are on that. But, the people that are affected, it does target the ACE receptors. It's targeting ACE receptor proteins, and ACE receptor proteins line all along a luteinizing hormone receptor, LH receptors. So luteinizing hormone is the hormone that allows a man, and actually a woman, but that's a whole other conversation, to get pregnant. And we have to have healthy levels of luteinizing hormone in our body in order to, again, have strong motile sperm and to allow the sperm to fertilize the egg in that process. And this horrible thing attacks and suppresses luteinizing hormone. Okay. Now, in the secondary and tertiary effects of that, you would ultimately have a total and free testosterone suppression, which is why you're seeing men who are getting COVID. And again, there's scientific studies out there. There's plenty now. You can go on PubMed or Science or Nature and find these things. But they have shown men who suffer or were diagnosed with COVID and had COVID for more than 6 days, had dramatic declines in both total and free testosterone. Like in one of the studies, which is a 7-month cohort study, there were 193 patients, and 76% of the patients all suffered a significant decline in both total and free testosterone levels, which again represents now a testosterone deficiency. And again, the science in that is proving that it again is due to targeting the ACE receptor proteins and luteinizing hormones. So, and I've said this, and I would want to make this point because obviously I've had many men come to me. Anyone who also got any sort of V to target and remediate, again, the C, I love how we're speaking in code here, it would tend to reason or standard, again, just the standard logical deductive reasoning aspect of this, that it would also target the same receptor patterns. So the vectors, the viral vectors of, again, COVID, which again are the ACE receptor proteins, would also be hit. So you would have the exact same thing. So you get V'd to remedy the C, and you're going to have the same results that potentially other people are having, which is, again, ultimately a suppression in total and free testosterone, which leads to a testosterone deficiency, which ultimately leads to you as a man or a woman feeling like absolute dog shit. Now, again, I have all these people who have messaged me. We don't have to pull them up. We want to save them for, privacy concerns. But they've sent me their lab and they're like, dude, look at this. This is literally 1 month after being diagnosed with the C. And then, I'll go back and say, okay, cool. Were you also V'd? And they're like, yeah, I am boosted or whatever. And so it's like, you can see this as a pattern. And again, it doesn't matter whether you didn't or you did, or you never got COVID, but got the V, or vice versa, or again, the same. It's a similar pattern. But as I said at the very, very beginning, there are guys, although no one, by the way, has proven this to me. They've just, immediately went on Instagram and said, it's not true. Mine stuff is perfect. I even posted a thread and said, look, if you can prove that what I'm saying is not true and you have blood work to show me that what I'm saying is not true, please verify it. And not one person, again, this is, theoretical, but not one person who said initially that like, oh, it's not true, mine's still perfect, has been able to show me their labs post. Now, again, I know there's people out there that will be able to, at least hopefully, but it's very interesting, Kris. And so, again, as I've said, it's critically important if you've been V'd or you got the C or both, that you are getting your lab work done, and you're getting your lab work done, relatively soon after, because again, most of the people that have experienced this, it all happened within 45 days.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I'll go into my personal experience here very shortly. But what I noticed with some of my clients who provided me their blood values, and I asked them to have it done frequently, because, let's get checked. They can do home tests. They can go to the doctors or whatever. So it's very easy for people in America to go get it done. Had you noticed any change after the first of the V and some of the people that were taking the second V? Because this is a weird thing. There was no change in a couple of my clients after having the first V. It was only after the second V. Did you notice the same? And if so, what is the difference? Is there a difference there that would allow this to happen?
It's a great question. Most people notice the decline after the second. And the reason that would be, meaning the second V, the reason that would be is just allowing your system to target the, again, so-called places that are due to remediate the C. Okay. Which again, for most guys, and really it's women too, it's luteinizing hormone receptors, because again, that's where you have a lot of the spike protein targeting. And I don't want to get into like a big, deeper discussion about mRNA and coded proteins and frequency and all that kind of stuff. But there is science out there now that talks about why it would happen after the second and not the first. And again, it's just because your system is being targeted specifically by those mRNA encoded spike proteins and ACE receptor proteins, which again are in luteinizing hormone cells. So it would stand to reason that people would have a faster or a more noticeable decline after the second, because they've had longer for those exact cells to be targeted by, again, the remediator of the vaccine. So again, it would be very normal to deduce that after the second one, and even after a booster, would you start seeing it, and not would you see it after the first one, because it just hasn't had enough time to attack and target the cells. Right.
Okay. That makes sense. Now, I personally haven't had the vaccine, but very recently I did get the C. Unfortunately, I thought I was going to be immune from it because I hadn't had a cold for how many years, I don't know. So anyway, I know I get my testosterone checked all the time, as you know, Jay. And I've always had, for my age, 47 years old, I've had quite healthy-ish testosterone levels at around 700, around 750. So I thought, okay, that's pretty good for me. And then I got a test recently, and it dropped down to half that, less than half that. In just a couple of months. It was unbelievable, because I was feeling the effects. Like you said, I was having issues with like inflammation within, like the muscles, the joints. I felt low in energy. I wasn't able to stay as focused as I generally could. And I thought, well, maybe this is the effects of the long COVID, where you do have that cognitive decline. Let me just go and get checked. And I went and got checked, and I was like, wow. Is this a correlation here? I don't know. And then I spoke to yourself, And you had showed me some data of this correlation. I was like, wow, that is it. I can't believe that is it. So this seems to be affecting obviously some people, and I was one of those people. So just because you're a healthy individual and you haven't had a cold before for ages, it doesn't matter. This can target you in many different ways. And sometimes, okay, you may not have the effects of like, I'm going to be bedridden for several weeks, but it can really have an effect on your hormones.
So let me just say this, because I told you on the show, and I'm Mr. Authentic and Transparent. I have it. Okay. I have not tested for it. I'm also not VE'd, but I was traveling and I came home. Literally today's day 8, and I'm much better. That's why I'm doing the podcast with you. But whatever it is, I had it. Like fiery brain, vertigo or lack of balance, hot, cold sweats, joint attacks, all that stuff, whatever it is. So I totally understand what you're saying. Definitely like a brain speed decline in certain ways. You just don't feel your best. But here's today. For me, it's day 8. I've taken all the natural adjuvants, that I've written about and I talk about and stuff like that. And so I feel a lot better. But I can definitely say that if this is in fact what I believe it to be, a bioweapon, a non-natural engineered virus, whatever you want to call it, then yes, there is a part of it that was engineered to reduce the population, regardless of where that may or may not be. And again, it stands to reason, Kris, that if it's to reduce the population, then it's going to target fertility. So again, by and large, if it's targeting fertility in both men and women, and maybe, again, a lot of the early research said that it was targeting specific sex classes of men, then you would ultimately have a decrease in free testosterone and total testosterone. Again, that's just a natural byproduct of it attacking your fertility factors. So, on top of this, and we've already talked about it, but it stands to reason and we must continue, is that we've never had a lower birth rate in the history of human society. If you, and I'm sure you do, but if you know anyone right now, anywhere in the world, especially in the first world in the West, almost anybody in their late 30s or early 40s that's attempting to get pregnant is on fertility meds. The environment is so contaminated. The major cities are so overrun with all sorts of shit in the air and in the food. And of course, like you said, in the plastics and the water bottles. I mean, this is the best water on earth, right? Icelandic, but it's still in a plastic bottle. So it's like, we have all these things that are attacking our endocrine systems and our, biological systems, our immunity, all of these things. And so like ultimately where we are now compared to where we were 50 years ago, I mean, it's almost impossible to even get pregnant, dude. Like it's crazy. I mean, again, I have a lot of friends, I'll be 51 here in a month, but I have a lot of friends who tell me, and not just tell me, they're reaching out to me and want to pay me to consult with them and stuff like that, like to give them fertility meds and what is the dosage and what do I do? And hey, I'm on test, but I want to do this with my wife. And I just have to tell them, hey man, it's a lot different than it was, 15 years ago when I got pregnant. It's just a totally contaminated, different world, and it's crazy. But I mean, if somebody asked me right now, how could I ensure that I get pregnant? I would literally say, move to Montana, move to Dakotas, move down into the Baja part of Mexico where there's no smog and you're at 6,000 or 7,000 feet. You know what I mean? You have to almost go where there isn't technology, where there isn't, again, the modernization of what I call the contamination of modernization. I mean, how do you, avoid all of these things at this point? I mean, dude, it's becoming more and more increasingly difficult.
Yeah, it is very difficult. That's why, even though I don't have plans for kids, of course, I want to optimize my testosterone levels and I'm doing whatever I can to mitigate the damage. I'm always wearing, the Faraday cage boxer shorts, for instance, doing everything that I can to mitigate that damage. Now, what I love about this podcast is that this is very similar to the course that you've got but in the sense that you really break it down, you make it digestible and translatable to anybody to understand. Yeah. Now, what have you covered in the course that isn't in the testosterone optimization therapy Bible? Obviously, like you said, things change, but I see that you've actually targeted a different form of outcome and an audience with this course.
So that first book was written for guys like you and me and doctors. right? So it's very advanced. It's written at a level where like, okay, I want to understand the risks and the rewards, but I also want to like be able to like, take it into my current life and apply it. Now, as you know, because you've read the book a couple of times, I mean, it's very deep, right? Like the chapter Agents of Change, if I would have had any idea what I was doing back then writing books, I would have made that into a book because it's just so profound. It's got peptides and gray market agents and all these other things that can be applied that have nothing to do with using therapeutic testosterone. But again, it was just kind of like, at that time of my life, it was like saying, okay, this is my masterpiece. And I'm just taking everything that's in my brain and I'm downloading it into this book. And so obviously, again, it came out nice and stuff like that, but it's just too overwhelming. So today's course is literally like all of the people who messaged me from that book being published, which was in January of 2018, up until now, saying, hey, dude, like, your book's amazing, but I mean, I can only read like 2 or 3 chapters. And then, some of the endocrinology and stuff like that just overwhelms me. Is there any way you could just give me a course that tells me how to do it, when to do it, and who to work with? And so that's what the course is. It's literally 7 modules. We go from like the very basics beginning. I mean, Kris, the truth is that you don't have to have any knowledge of testosterone at all to be able to buy this course and apply it and learn from it. And literally, I mean, depending on how studious you are, within one day, off to the races. But that book, as you know, you could never do that. It was so authoritative. I mean, it still is. I mean, sometimes I read it and I shake my head. I'm like, what the fuck did I put this in the book for? But I mean, in truth, it's like a massive synopsis of that book, enhanced because there was a lot of information that we didn't know about, which we should talk about, today, in regards to AIs, right? That we didn't know at that point in time. I mean, we had a smattering of awareness that they were not good for you, but now we know, and so it really is like a synthesis of all of the latest and greatest information that we found out in the last 4 years, but made into something that, again, nobody has to know shit. You literally buy the course. There's 3 levels of it, by the way. There's a basic, intermediate, and advanced. And the only real difference is the information's the same, but like the intermediate is access to a private group, a men's group with a bunch of doctors that I have. And then advanced is just a bunch of bonus stuff that I give people. Like if you coached with me one-on-one or you booked a private consultation with me and stuff. But I mean, the information is the same all the way through. But anyone, regardless of their awareness or knowledge of understanding this, can literally purchase it, start listening to the videos. And within, like I said, depending on how studious you are, within a day to a week, be on the path.
Right. Okay. So is this like, okay, let's say there's a listener now, his name's Ken, he's 35 years old, and he has an idea that his testosterone may be low, or he's had the test to say it is low. However, the doctor hasn't given him any recommendations. Maybe he's given him several suggestions. Okay, here's a pellet you can put on your butt. Here's an injection. Here's a cream to put on your testicles, but I don't know which way to go. Is this course gonna be for him? So he comes out and has an understanding, this is the therapy that I need to take, and this is the form I should take.
100% yes. In fact, it's going to stop him from taking pellets, right? It's going to stop him from taking what I call ineffective or variable, delivery systems of testosterone that really no one should take. Because again, through my awareness of this and my hacking through this and breaking this down, and again, trying everything myself or with various physicians, which I have, I eliminate all of the needless noise, right? Like there's just, as you know, I mean, let's be honest, again, allopathic medical system. I mean, without saying anything bad about it, doctors are trying to make money, man. It's literally that simple. At the end of the day, they have all these different things they can value add you and attempt to sell you on. And if you don't have a full-blown mastery of the endocrine system, and let's be honest, Kris, they don't. I mean, so hormonal optimization is not taught in medical school. So the average physician has to learn this through an experiential body of work, right? Working with hundreds and hopefully, thousands of patients, both men and women, on how to hormonally optimize and balance their hormones. It's literally that simple. So there's no cookie cutter, plan. I mean, the majority of doctors obviously have read my book or familiarize themselves with my book to truly learn this. and then they work with their patients. But there really isn't anything out there that's guiding them on the standards on how to do this. So it's like they also look to people like me, who have been doing this for 20 plus years and doing it right. Again, working with the guys out there and gals. There's also many of amazing doctors that are women that do this, to teach them like how to actually do this right. And so when in the first module, I talk about like, who you should avoid in this process. It helps so many people because I tell them straight up, like, look, you're not going to go to your primary care physician or your HMO doctor, if that's what you have, and expect to get optimized hormonally. It's not going to work. It doesn't work like that. And so there's the conversation of like, look, I understand, some of you guys in your mind, it's like, I have a $40 copay and that's all I can afford for my health. And, I get very detailed right there. And I explained that like, ultimately you cannot afford not to go bigger picture because ultimately, as you know, Kris, having a heart attack, getting type 3 diabetes, which leads to, glaucoma or some sort of issue in your foot, where you have, you have to have surgery. You got to have maybe your foot amputated. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but at the end of the day, we have a document in the course that teaches you the value of how you must afford to not have one of these horrible incidents at some point in your life, whether you're in your 40s or 50s, because it will cost you out of pocket more than $100,000. So one of the things I say, and again, this is all in the course, everything is in the course, there's nothing missing, but I say that the truth is that you can't afford not to be able to spend $3,000 to $10,000 a year on your personal health. Because if you don't, that means that your priorities are out of order. And, we have like a kind of a document in there that shows like whatever your income level is, whether you make $30,000 a year or $100,000 plus, how can you afford these things? And again, it's very, very simple when you start doing the math of like what's most important. But ultimately, being the proactive scientist of your own health, understanding like you cannot afford to get a diagnosis with type 2 diabetes at the age of 50. Right? You cannot afford to get or have a vascular incident like a heart attack or an MI or even myocarditis or any of these things, because again, the actual costs of these things to your health out of pocket is again exceeding 6 figures. And so people have been brainwashed to look at it the other way versus looking at it the proactive way, which is like, hey man, I can absolutely afford to spend $3,000 to $10,000 a year on my personal health. I mean, think about how much money you and I spend on our supplements and living this lifestyle and doing all these things we do. So, people just have to get into a mindset of like, you can afford this regardless of your income level. It's just taking a proactive, accountable aspect of looking at things versus just reacting.
For sure. I really like that answer because it really does put it into perspective when you consider the amount of people today who are maybe successful in business, but they're failing at life. They're failing at their health. However, they think they're a success. No, definitely not. They're not investing in themselves. And that's what life is. That is what success is. And what I like about, in the course, like you said, you navigate people because there's a lot of people out there that go, you know what, I can't approach my doctor about this. Well, maybe neither should you. However, these are the avenues you can go down in order to get the right advice, to get the blood work, and then get prescribed the right form of testosterone for you. And what is great about today is that there are various places that are above board. I'm not talking about black market here, where you can speak to doctors online and get a prescription based on your blood work and get it mailed to you. It's so much easier today.
And by the way, to that point, Kris, COVID has been a blessing because COVID has eradicated the restrictions of having to go into office to make office visits. So now anybody, pretty much anywhere in the world, can do a telemedicine consult with any of the top doctors. So, but that's a really good point, and I want to cover that. If you are a person who lives in South America, Mexico, somewhere in the EU where it's legally, and again, I know not many places in the EU, maybe Amsterdam, but there are some places where you can legally procure therapeutic testosterone from a pharmacy.
Oh yeah, Turkey, Greece.
Yeah, exactly. But you can't work with a physician locally because they just don't have the know-how, and I know there are guys out there. And again, I apologize. I'm not, being disparaging of everybody, but the bottom line is most of these guys in countries like that, can get testosterone. I understand that. And so, the part of this course is like, okay, this is what you do. And again, we cover all these things if you can't work with a physician, okay? Because it's all about your health and safety. It's all about your longevity. It's all about living longer and stronger and doing it within the context of health. So, we talk about like, okay, are you administering this yourself? Are you administering 150 or 125 milligrams a week of therapeutic testosterone without the guidance of a physician? That's fine. Again, as long as it's legal in your country to do so, here's how you do it, right? I mean, obviously, I always recommend working with a physician if you're in the States, Canada, the UK, places where this is pretty simple now. But again, I do cover that. I'm sensitive to the idea that there are guys out there that want to understand how to do this who can get testosterone for $40. You know what I mean? But like, don't have a doctor that has a clue. And again, it's very important that we talk about this, that a lot of doctors who don't understand this will mess you up. So when you're in this course, you cannot mess up. If you follow the instructions in the course, everything is covered for you. You have your hand held. It's do this, do this, do this. You absolutely cannot do that. And here is what will happen ultimately. There's a lot of things that I cover in the course, that I'm just kind of like hacking through right now and talking to you about it. But like one of the things that, people understand or have to understand is, and this because we've talked about this before, but if this is done right, there are no side effects, literally no side effects. People, they hear that and they freak out because again, they've been demonized in the media with testosterone is this or that, or all these different things. But we've conclusively proved that when you start this correctly, and again, the goals are, health and safety and longevity, there are no side effects. Sure, you might have to titrate your dosage a little bit lower or a little bit higher. But again, without all these other things that, again, the willy-nilly doctor out there who doesn't really have the deep learning of this as they should, who wants to prescribe you, right, where you have like 8 or 9 agents that you're on, when you don't do it that way and you do it the right way, which is obviously the way that's found in this course, you're not going to have any symptoms or side effects. I mean, again, you may have a week or two where you have to literally balance things out a little bit more, but you're going to feel amazing. You may, again, have to dosage, what is called titrating your dosage a little bit, again, lowering it or increasing it. But if you're working with any of the doctors that I recommend in this book, in the course, it's impossible to have any kind of issues because they're just maximal professionals and experts at what they do. But again, if you follow the instructions in the course and you understand what you're listening to, which you will, it's impossible not to. Kris, there's just no way you can't be successful in this.
Yeah, and then to add on that, the phenomenal aspect to the course is that then you get access to a private community where if you've got any questions, you've got any concerns, you can ask other people, other doctors, and obviously you have access to Jay as well, there, which doesn't come cheap, but it's definitely worth it. But the course is very, very valuable, and it does come relatively cheap, I thought. 100%. So if people want to check out the course, get a little bit more information and sign up and participate, which I do encourage everybody to do. I've had access to the course. I've checked it out, and it is very, very well in depth to the extent that I'm now providing this link to my clients because, of course, there's only so much information and knowledge that I have. But experts like Jay, this is what they do. So, for me to pass this on to my clients is an absolute pleasure. So how do people get access to this, Jay?
So they can go to the sales page. So right now the course is open for people like Kris. Any influencer that right now wants to promote the course with their affiliate code. And by the way, Kris's code, which you guys definitely want to use because it's going to provide you a 25% discount off of any level of the course, again, basic, intermediate, or advanced, is Kris, KIRSG, capital G. It doesn't matter. Just put Kris G in and you will get 25% off any level of the course. But it is, you go to TOT, so it's Testosterone Optimization Therapy, TOT, decoded.com. And then when you're on there, when you scroll down, there's all sorts of stuff to read. It's typical sales page, ClickFunnels sales page. That will give you the information about like what you're going to find in the course. But when you get down to the bottom, just make sure you put that code in. And Kris, you get take 25% off the cost of the course.
Okay, awesome. And we'll put the links into our show notes. And obviously, when this is on YouTube, you look a little bit below and you'll see the link there with that discount code. And as I said before, this is absolutely phenomenal what you've done, Jay.
Thank you, brother.
Especially this is needed right now for everybody, for sure, but particularly with what has happened over the past couple of years and people having a V, people having a C, and may see a major decline in their testosterone levels. But if they do feel the effects of lethargy, they're having joint muscle inflammation and just cognitive decline, maybe this is associated with it. So do what I did and please get your blood work checked, because you may be surprised and not pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. And let me just also say, you know this, and I'll be back to talk about that. But the peptides course, which we also built, is coming. Yeah. And I want to say that the peptides course will probably be available either at the end of February, about a month from now, or sometime in early March. It really just depends. The goal is to get this to an automated, funnel where it's everybody has access to it regardless of where you are. So you'll be able to put, if you, for example, if you see a thing with Kris, or you see a thing with Ben Greenfield, or you see, whoever, you'll have a code to be able to put in from that audience that you came from, and you'll be able to be served all this information, in a much more automated fashion. So that should be here, like I said, sometime within the next month to the next 35 to 40 days. But you and I will do a podcast and we'll come on and we'll talk much more about peptides, because I can assure you that course is deep. It's probably, it's the same as the hormones course, but we cover like peptides from a standpoint of like which ones to use in combination, and like what are the ones to really concern yourself with. Because right, there's like 1,500 peptides out there right now. And a lot of people are confused because how do I get, research chemical company peptides versus compounding pharmacy peptides? And right now it's very nebulous in the industry, because a lot of people inside the space are fearing that the FDA is going to crack down on peptides very, very quickly, or very, very soon. Like when I say soon, like in 2022. Right now, there's still 7 FDA approved peptides. And so most of the compounding pharmacies are selling those. But if you're in the industry, you also know that, there's no regulation because of COVID and all the other stuff that's gone on in the last 2 years. And so there are a lot of compounders that are just basically like in between, they're living in the wild, wild west, as I said, Kris, and they're, still writing scripts with their doctors for these things. And they're technically not, FDA approved. So again, there's a lot of people in the industry that are kind of like waiting, to see what happens and how it evolves. But at the end of the day, who gives a shit about any of that? Because as you know, peptides literally save lives. They are phenomenal, for whether it's for cognition improvement, for its healing, for immunity, obviously for muscle building and fat loss and all of those other things. But I mean, they are just profound agents. And so, Nick and I put this course together. It took us about 5 months. It's really deep. It's very in depth. We even got, parts in there where it's like big brain stuff. If you want to be a clinician and you want to learn the molecular biology and the biochemistry of these things, you can watch that. But if you're just somebody, who just wants to learn how to use it, do it, where to get it, how can I start applying it in my life, we have that too. So look for that in the next 30 to 45 days for sure. And obviously I'll come back and we can talk even deeper about that one when it's ready.
Yeah, we've been talking about that last year when you've been giving me updates, and I can't wait to have both you and Nick Andrews on the show. You guys have given me some very valuable advice on peptides, especially just, when I tore my tricep, I spoke to you guys immediately. So I was taking peptides before the surgery and immediately following for a good while following. And I think I was on about 5 different peptides that you and Nick had suggested, and it's absolutely phenomenal. So really cannot wait to get you guys back on the show. So that would be awesome. But thank you very much for coming on and providing so much valuable information, Jay. So where can people find you, as well as the website? We'll put that link. If you could let us know where people can find you and reach out, that'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. So my primary website is JAY, middle initial C. So it's JC and then my last name, Campbell.com. That's my primary website. Everything is there that you would want to find me. I'm also like you on Instagram and Twitter. which is at J Campbell, just J Campbell, my name, 333. Both of them are the same. And then, of course, my YouTube channel is J Campbell 333. So just, if you just do a Google search, J Campbell, whatever social media that you find yourself on, I'm most active on Twitter personally, and then Instagram second. So either of those two places, if you need to message me, you can find me there.
Great. Awesome. And we'll also add those links as well in the show notes here for people to find you. But thank you very much, Jay. It's been a pleasure. Can't wait to have you back on very, very soon. And thank you, everybody, for listening. This is the Kris Gethin podcast. And until next week, we are out. Thank you ever so much for listening. My name is Kris Gethin, and I am out.